So ahead of TV's live show for the general election on this Thursday, we caught up with some of the candidates running in Southampton seats. I sat down with Caroline Nokes, who is the Conservative candidate for Romsey and Southampton North. Okay, so just a bit of background information for everyone. Why did you decide to get into politics in the first place?
Oh, I think that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure that I would ever say it was a conscious decision. I found myself born into a very political family. Read politics at university because I found it a really interesting A-level, but I didn't go and read politics at university because I wanted to be a politician. It just sort of happened. And then was asked to be a council candidate in a no-hope ward, a paper candidate, way back in 1999. Agreed, won it, and it's a very addictive drug.
Speaking to some of the candidates earlier on in the week as well, they said you're almost, coming into this election, now UKIP aren't running in the seat, you're almost undefeatable. What would you say to that?
So I've got a long history of standing in Romsey and then Romsey and Southampton North. I fought the seat in 2005 when I lost by 125 votes. Let me tell you, that is a very character-building experience. It makes you very resilient, very tough, and it also makes you very determined. And certainly I take nothing for granted in any election. I always work really hard and stand on a proud record of being one of Westminster's most responsive MPs.
What are sort of the key policies to you personally?
I think it's about prosperity. The unemployment rate in my constituency has halved since 2010. We're now one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, and that matters to me. The government's worked really hard to make sure that we have as close to full employment as we have ever had. We're at record levels of employment for women and for young people. So prosperity really matters to me. I think also one of the key issues in Romsey and Southampton North is that we have a largely rural landmass right on the edge of urban Southampton. What matters to people, and what I've noticed over the past 7 years in my constituency caseload, is planning. People want a green belt around Southampton. They want new housing development to be in the most appropriate and sustainable places. And they are very concerned at what they see as overdevelopment. And the third and most important thing to me is the people. I was born and brought up in Hampshire. I've lived in the Romsey constituency, or the immediate Romsey area, all of my life. And I know how important the people are. It's why I'm one of the most responsive MPs in Parliament, because I regard it as my number one job to make sure that the views of my constituents are heard.
Okay, you spoke about the people. Something that was decided by the people not too long back, of course, is Brexit. Where do you stand on what we need to do next? Obviously, there's been so many sort of different debates about what kind of Brexit we need to do and what sort of deal we need to put forward. Where do you stand?
I voted to remain, and I did that because I thought it was in Britain's best interest. However, at heart I am a Democrat, and I have to accept the decision, which is why that I voted to invoke Article 50. It's why I've supported the Prime Minister in her determination to make sure that we get a good deal from our exit from the European Union. I don't pretend that that's going to be easy. I really don't think it is going to be. But what matters is that we have a Brexit that allows British companies to trade freely with the single market, that we have a Brexit that prioritises both British nationals living in the EU as well as EU citizens living here. And we want a Brexit that is orderly and smooth. I think it's going to be difficult. I don't make any bones about that, but I think it's imperative that we have the right person at the helm to make sure we achieve that.
Famously, you voted against the same-sex marriage law a couple of years back. What were your reasons behind this, and do you still agree with the decision you made back then?
Looking back, do I regret my decision to vote against same-sex marriage? Yes, and I've been really open about that. I think it was the wrong thing to do, but thank goodness my no vote didn't have any impact on the outcome. We now have equal marriage, and I always tell people this, one of the nicest weddings I've ever been to was two of my really close friends in Bournemouth who had a fantastic wedding, and I think it's really important that we recognise marriage and celebrate it in all the forms that it comes in.
You voted pro-fracking. Was there reasons behind this? Or?
So I think we need to have a suite of energy supplies. I don't think there are any easy decisions on how we provide our energy going forward. I'm really proud of the fact that I've also been incredibly pro-solar, and the immediate Romsey area has some of the largest solar farms in the whole of Europe. And that hasn't always won me friends with my constituents when I've been supportive of them. I sat for 5 years on the Environmental Audit Committee. I know that we need to have a whole range of renewables, including things like anaerobic and aerobic digestion. But at the end of the day, I think it's equally important that we keep the lights on. So we have to continue to explore fracking, allow some test sites. But the minute that there is any suggestion that we have problems here in the UK, then I think we need to be wary and have a precautionary principle.
Where do you stand on tuition fees?
So I think we've been completely candid about this, is that there is a real difficulty with the deficit, and student tuition is expensive. And however it's paid for, ultimately it's going to be the students themselves who benefit most. Do I think it fair that the barista working in Starbucks on this university campus should be taxed so that students who will benefit most from their degrees don't have to pay for it? No, I don't. I think we have to recognise that education does come at a cost, and ultimately it'll be the students who benefit most from it.
In the 2015-16 year, you spent just over £52,000 on expenses, which is sort of higher than average MPs and actually higher than the MPs for Itchin and Test. Did you see this coming, or is there any specific reasons to why you ended up spending more?
So I suspect that that is due to a staffing matter, which I'm bound by a confidentiality agreement not to discuss. I have to say that I have always worked really hard to keep my expenses as low as possible. I'm very economical, only spending £2,500 a year on a constituency office, which is a lot less than many MPs do. But I think if you look back over my record of the past 7 years, I have consistently been judged one of the best value for money MPs in the country.
Were you expecting Theresa May to call this? And what were your first thoughts when you saw it happening and like, oh, I'm going to have to run a lot sooner than you expected to, maybe?
I mean, certainly this election is 3 years sooner than I expected. I was a firm supporter of the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, and so I wasn't really anticipating this until 2020. However, there are some serious plus sides to a general election, not least, hopefully it will give the Prime Minister a clear mandate on Brexit, but much more importantly, it's enabled me to spend the last 7 weeks out and about in my constituency, connecting with the electorate. This is home to me. They're the people that I know and love, so it's been a huge amount of fun, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.